with us for this webinar. So for the students, I would like to introduce Dr. S.K. Kumar to you. So Dr. Kumar, he is working as a scientist in the Center for Health Education, School of Health Science, in the University of Transdisciplinary Health Science and Technology at Bangalore. And Dr. Kumar, he has got tremendous experimental research experience in Ayurvedic medicines, as well as in the drug standardization. And he has been working as a technical advisor for several pharmaceutical companies for the development of Ayurvedic formulations for the clinical applications. He's a part of the team for documentation, assessment, and promotion of ethnoveterinary practices, and is also involved in the development of curriculum for postgraduate diploma in ethnoveterinary practice, what we call as the PGDEVP at Tanuvas in Chennai. So everybody knows, all the veterinarians, they know very well about the Tanuvas. He is a part of the group which is promoting ethnoveterinary practices through training veterinarians and farmers. And almost about 1,500 veterinarians and 30,000 dairy farmers, they are associated with his team for the promotion of ethno-veterinary practices and veterinary Ayurveda. And he's a very widely traveled person who has visited several countries internationally, delivering numerous seminars, and has got 15 years of experience in authentic Ayurveda practice. So I won't be taking much of your time. So if I would go on and on about the introduction of Dr. Kumar, but today he's here with us to interact with the students. So I am now handing over the mic to Dr. Kumar to continue with his lecture and about his valuable experiences.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Rajdeep Kaur, for introducing me. And good afternoon, everyone. Respected Vice Chancellor Gadwasu, Dr. Indrajit Singh sir, Dean Dr. SPS Guman sir, and Dr. Dumka sir, and faculty of Gadwasu, and my dear students. It's been an honor for me to be here and to deliver the lecture on traditional systems of medicines, particularly on ethnoveterinary and veterinary Ayurveda. Before taking to the lecture, I just want to know, as an Ayurveda doctor practicing for last 15, 16 years in the community and interacting with the veterinarians for last 10 years on the subject, I believe that many of the veterinarians are not aware about these systems of medicines, and they don't consider this going to be, as a science. This is my experience because I'm interacting with the veterinarians for last 10 years, and we have trained across the country and even overseas veterinarians. But many of them think that traditional system means it's like an herb, and it may not help us, it may help us. Like that, there will be a lot of dilemma in understanding and take this into their practices. So it's privilege for me make you to understand with the science and the subject and the principles and the practices. So I'll take you for next 1 hour for you to introduce the different systems of medicines, particularly Ayurveda and ethnoveterinary medicines. I'm Dr. Kumar here, scientist working in the Department of Ethnoveterinary or School of Health Sciences under the university called as Transdisciplinary University. So my contents for today's lecture is, goes with traditional medicines. What are traditional medicines? Then comes various streams of medicines which have been practicing since many ages across the country and across the globe. And folk medicine, many of you might have confused with the traditional and folk and all comes together like that. I'm going to explain or brief you that how it's going to differ, how it's going to be similar. Then relevance of folk medicine, why we have to learn the folk medicine. It's very important for us to look into that. Then Ayurveda, you might have seen many Ayurveda colleges, Ayurveda doctors, Ayurveda medicines. It's coming in advertisement and also, but you may not be knowing what is exactly Ayurveda. Then veterinary Ayurveda. So how Ayurveda and veterinary Ayurveda is going to be similar or dissimilar, and ancient wisdom, I'm going to brief you. Then at the end, we'll get to know that what is ethnoveterinary sciences and practices. So these are the contents for today's lecture. I'll go one by one. So I'll make you to understand. I hope you'll just start following the things. And if any questions, you can ask me at the end of the lecture. So I just want to put a question to you all. Is Ayurveda, herbal medicine, ethnomedicine, folk medicine, or traditional medicine one and the same, or phytomedicine is one and the same? From your end, answer may be yes, but it is not yes, it's no. because each and every component, like what I have put it in the slide, Ayurveda, herbal, all are different entities going parallelly with or without principles, but everything, every medicine using herbs as a source of medicine. So herb is the only common in among all, different streams. But other than that, there are a lot of variations in understanding the principles and the practices. So don't get confused yourself that, okay, using herb is Ayurveda, using herb is ethno, using herb is folk, like that. Every medicine has its own principles and practices. So take it from me, it's not same. Okay, what is traditional medicines? Commonly, you can put in the Google, you can see a lot of explanations has been given for traditional medicine, but as our WHO defines in a different way. What WHO says about the traditional medicine? It is nothing but some of the total knowledge, skills, beliefs, practices, theories, experiences using indigenous, knowledge, cultures, everything coming to the picture for traditional medicines. So as amalgamation of all together coming into a single stream, they have defined as traditional medicine. It may be used for maintenance, cure, prevention, diagnosis, improvement, like that it goes. It's not limiting to cure or diagnosis or prevention. It comprises of all the aspects of maintenance of health, physically, mentally, together with the beliefs, practices, experiences, knowledge, skills. Altogether, it is called as traditional medicine defined by WHO. Is it same words good for us also? If you look into that, yes, of course, it's the same. But when you look into the different streams, and it explains in a different ways, that's all. These includes Ayurveda, traditional medicines. I'm telling what are traditional medicines comprises means includes Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, including ancient Iranian medicine, Persian, Islamic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, Campo, traditional Korean medicine, acupuncture, all these comes under traditional systems of medicines. So we'll not get into all these, but only we'll try to understand what is folk, what is Ayurveda, what is ethno medicine for today's lecture. So I just want to brief you what are the various streams of medicines which have been practiced in India for ages. So to make you simpler, I have classified into 4 streams. One is non-codified. What is the meaning of non-codified? Non-codified means there are no literatures for this. That means for to read, to learn, and to practice, there are no literatures, but it is transferring from mouth to mouth. That is called as folk medicine. That means ethno medicine is also a part of folk medicine, but it is non-codified. But why it is non-codified? Because there are no literatures for that. Then codified classical streams of medicines. Example, Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, and Tibetan medicine. Why it is codified? Because there are plenty of literatures are available in different languages of India, particularly Sanskrit, then followed by different regional languages, then also in English, and it starts from 5000 BC till date 19 or 20 or 21st century. The textbook or the literatures are available. It is ongoing process, and education systems are there, and there are bounded colleges to train and empower the faculties and the students. So it is coming under codified classical stream. The third is allied systems. Allied means different systems of medicines come together and they're going as yoga and naturopathy. So they come under allied systems of medicine. And the fourth is systems of foreign origin. It is not belong to India, but still it is playing a pivotal role in Indian context. Those are homeopathy and Western biomedicine, which is also called as allopathy. What you all studied is Western biomedicine. I hope you are able to follow now various streams of medicines, non-codified, codified, allied systems, systems of foreign origin. So when you look into these, there are varying systems of medicines, in practice in India. If you look into the different corners, you can see different way of practice. So altogether, we can try to learn few of them like Ayurveda and ethno veterinary medicine. So first we'll try to know what is folk stream. So which is also ethno medicine. Why folk? Because if you go to the countryside of any state, you can see many people will be giving medicines to human as well as animals. It's not only limiting to India. If you go to African continent or African countries, plenty of such practitioners you can see on the street side as well, and even on the well-established centers. Even if you go to Latin American countries, Bolivia, Brazil, even in Argentina, you can see. If you go to European countries, there also you can see herbology, which is also a part of folk stream. So people have started using herbs as food as well as medicines. Once they get to know that its importance, it is being in practice and they are promoting. So, okay. And that's what I mean to say in this slide, presence all over the world. It is not limiting to India. You may think that, okay, why Indians are so in the 21st century, so much we have been established in modern medicine, but still people are following because it is useful. So it is in practice. So presence all over the world. It's not India or other neighboring countries. It's even if you go to Eastern countries like Singapore, Malaysia, you can see plenty of people are practicing. Diverse and varied. What is the meaning of a diverse and varied? It is not common across. Even within Punjab, if you go to different districts or different, taluks, you can see different people are practicing in a different way using the same herb. That is the meaning of diverse and varied. See, that's coming to the picture. So how to understand that? So that's the main, assignment for our university, wherein which we documented and we demonstrated with that standard methodologies to understand that and to promote in a better way, giving validation. So diverse and varied is very difficult for us to take it, but once we have been validated, it's very easy to practice. Then oral and undocumented. Yes, mouth to mouth. People say that, okay, you use this for this condition. Nowhere it is documented. Nobody wants to do documentations on that. Ours is the first institute in India, wherein which we started long back in 1993 to start documenting on these practices. Now we have established so much formulations for human as well as animals. Ecosystem and ethnic community specific. What is the meaning of it? Ecosystem. If you go to northeastern part of India, there are, geographically we are varying across India. You might be knowing. So depending on the geography, so practices are varying. Depending on the availability of the resource or the plant material, the practices are varying. To understand that it is not limiting and it is not the same. So if you want to take the knowledge from northeast to south, then it's going to vary because the geography, climate and weather. So always the folk stream or the ethnomedicine will be ecosystem and ethnic community specific. Ethnic community means different community people practices for different diseases. If you go to Andhra Pradesh, there are a lot of bone setters you can see as a folk physicians. They do good job in setting the, fractured bones or ligaments or even fracture or dislocated joints. So they do good job. So it goes with the community of individuals and it's go with the practices of the community. So folk stream is always ecosystem and ethnic community specific. And how it is interlinked with the cultural practices, I just want 2 examples for you. I don't know whether you practice Yugadi. Yugadi we considered it comes in the month of March or April every year. It's a new year for Hindu to say, particularly in Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, Kerala, we practices in southern India. During that day, beginning of the summer, we take neem with the jaggery as a ritual. What does that mean? Why we have to take and why we have to follow that? If you look into the scientific understanding of it, it says that because of the, you're going to set, it's going to begin or onset of summer is going to start. So if you start taking neem flower and, it improves or it maintains your health. That is a scientific way of understanding. Then the second practice, if you go to the South Canara, that is Western Ghats of Karnataka, there are practice of taking a decoctions made out of Halostonia scholaris root bark to prevent malaria during monsoons. So every household, they do practice of these things. So I'm just giving 2 examples. If you look into the Indian context, Northeast, Southwest, a lot of such practices will come into our picture, so that we need to find what is the scientific background behind practices. So the folk stream and the cultural practices are interrelated. And see, it is not I have started or you have started. It is since ages, it's there in our household practices. We are doing and we are going to do it. So this gives some background for us that how folk medicines are very scientific. Then who are the carriers of the folk streams? So if no colleges, no institute, then how it is carrying from generation to generations? It's it's really astonishing for me as well when I started to work in this university 10 or 11 years back. Then I try to understand when I visited the field and when I get to know that healers, then I started to understand there are a lot of people who are carrying this knowledge from generation to generation. So one such is general practitioners. There are 1 million such folk practitioners across India. Then birth attendants, you see the number, how, okay? Then bone setters, herbal healers, they claim that they're healing or they're treating. Then Vishavaidyas, particularly treating poisonous conditions. And Pashu Vaidyas, treating only animals. Okay, then traditional ophthalmologists who are treating eye diseases, particularly using herbal medicines. Okay, so these are the carriers of the folk stream. Though they may not have the institute, though they not have any literatures, but still mouth to mouth, word to word, they are practicing, they are promoting, and they are transferring the knowledge among the generations. So these are the carriers. And our job is to understand only Pashu Vaidyas, what is their role, what are the knowledge what are the knowledges within them, and what TDU has done, and how it is relevant to understand Ethno and veterinary Ayurveda. So transmission, as I already mentioned, it is not institutional, only it is people to people process. So if you look into that context of going to the healer, initially they may not reveal the formulations, initially they may not reveal the the name of the herb, but once you get into that, once they get the confidence about yourself, then they'll start revealing the knowledge systems. Earlier, there are paramparas called as Guru Shishya paramparas, where student used to stay with the gurus to learn and practice. But still, it is prevailing in some part or some institute, but it is not across. Now it has been institutionalized, but when particular to folk knowledge, it is not so. So highly decentralized method of knowledge generation and dissemination. That means if healer is there, then you're going to get the knowledge. If you lost the healer, their knowledge is also lost along with that. That is decentralized. And one institute under Ministry of Ayush is functioning not to train or empower, only to promote it and to make it to reach to the community. That is Northeastern Institute of Folk Medicine. It is in Pasighat, Arunachal Pradesh. So what are the natural resources used in folk medicine? You might have, like to understand. So medicinal plants is the major source. Animal products is also a secondary source. But when you look into that, major source is from plant and plant-based. So 35,000 to 70,000 medicinal plants being used in folk medicine, whereas 6,300 species of plants and several hundred species of animals also used by Ayurveda and other system of medicine. But whereas non-codified like folk medicine number is very huge, to say 35,000 to 70,000. See the number, like 6,300 is where and 35,000 is where. That means Ayurveda, when you compare to the folk medicine, Ayurveda is nothing to say, but the resources are more in folk and ethno medicine. So as we got to know the basics of that, like, how it is being, what are the sources, but how relevant it is to take the folk knowledge. It's question to all of us. Is it not? So relevance, why we need to know the folk knowledge when so-called established modern system of medicine is at our doorstep, why we need to know? So the relevance is very apt for us to understand the majority of the deliveries, that means the drug deliveries in the world, 60% are managed by local health traditions, folk medicine or ethno medicine, which includes antenatal, postnatal and other case, with all other surgical, non-surgical, ophthalmological, bone settings and other animal health managements includes. When we come for the drug delivery or the finding of new drug, the discovery of quinine, a drug from cinchona tree, was possible only from Peruvian LHT. Peru is a Latin American country. This practice of using that cinchona tree bark was so common in the community to treat malaria and other fever condition, was led to get a quinine from local health traditions. So this was a discovery of quinine from their practices. Second discovery is promising drug Artemisia, is from Chinese LHT, Chinese local health traditions. It was so much practice in Chinese community using Artemisia annua as a drug for treating so many joint affiliation or ailments. Okay, so keeping that as an eye opener And, researchers have come forward to understand that, and they have discovered Artemisia or artemisinin. So these are the relevance. And coming to the Indian context, what is the role of Ayurveda and traditional medicines of India? Solution for hepatitis and B and C is actually from Indian LHT. It is local traditions practices in India. You might be knowing that if you go to any village, you can see plenty of healers are giving medicines for condition called as jaundice. When person is suffering with yellowish discoloration, they will go to healer rather than going to the physician. It is so practiced and it is still prevalent. And what is that herb they are using for that condition is Phyllanthus amarus. It's the first photo you can see. This is a herb which is being so common across. So that herb having enough compounds, phytocompounds, enough action and indication particular to improve the condition jaundice. It is so prevalent in our practices. People are using, they are aware of it, but still, the discovery of the compounds from this plant, Phyllanthus amarus, led to manage or to treat hepatitis B and C. And other examples from Indian context is turmeric, neem, or many excellent remedies has been told, and the patency has been taken by other countries, not from India. Okay. So according to NAPRALA database, University of Illinois, WHO's record to say 95% of all modern drugs derived from plants have been either provided by LST or modern applications similar, and the lead is from local practice or folk medicine. So the data is from WHO. So to understand even the modern so-called established the science, they try to understand or take the molecules derived from traditional medicines. Okay. So why, if it is so important, so relevant, so, so much knowledge in the community, why it has not been in the forefront, training and empowering, why it is not in practice? That's a question from everybody, but still, why, what is the reason? I'm just going to put it in this slide. So what are the social issues related to folk medicines, the contemporary? Lack of social support and esteem. People don't believe, even if they see the results, they are bit skeptical to take and practice. And marginalization by other systems, including Ayurveda. Ayurveda doctors don't believe the folk practices. They say that no, it may not, because there are no references in Ayurveda. And the modern doctors, even they don't support for such practices. Issues related to IPR and benefit sharing. Always, when you come into the conclusion that this medicine is going to work for this condition, lot of issues comes with IPR, intellectual property rights. Who is going to own it? Either the industry or the scientist or the practitioner or the beneficiary. So issues related to that comes into the picture, and lack of serious effort for fundamental research, in particular to this, folk medicine. What is the science behind? Nobody is working on that to make or to take this knowledge to the community in scientific way. Loss of resource base. There are no institute, there are no faculties. So loss of resource base and lack of political support. Okay. And political in the sense, what I have put it here is policy makers to say. So they don't consider, and already we have enough science. So why we want to go for the next level or to take the age old science, they think, and they don't support. Lack of collaborative research among the institutes. For example, ours is a university where we work on, traditional medicines, but none of the modern universities are interested to collaborate with us to do research. So efforts to mainstream the tradition. Nobody is coming forward, or no institute are coming forward to take this to mainstream. So these are the contemporary social issues related to folk medicine, why it is not in the forefront. So far we have tried to learn what is folk or what is ethno, but now we will try to learn what is codified medical systems. Already I have mentioned codified means there should be a literature, there should be a, to say an institute to transfer the knowledge from generation to generation and to carry the system. So medical knowledge systems like Ayurveda, Siddha, Tibetan and Unani comes under codified medical systems. It is prevalent, and across the country, across the states, you can see institutes, research institutes, training institutes, and hospitals for practice the same. So as different specialty areas, all the systems have different specialty areas and different strength and principles. As sophisticated theoretical foundations, it's not like folk or ethno medicine. all the systems like Ayurveda, Siddha, Tibetan and Unani have sophisticated theoretical foundations and as special understanding of physiology, pathogenesis, pharmacology and pharmaceuticals, which is different from Western biomedicine. We call it in a different names. For example, for physiology, we call it as a Sharira Kriya because you know that is a terminology from Sanskrit origin. So still we carry with the same words, but for your understanding, I have put it in the modern way. Sharira Kriya and pathogenesis is called Roga Vignan, pharmacology is called Dravyaguna Vignan, and pharmaceutical is called as Bhaishajya Vignan. Like that it goes. But when you look into the exact literal meaning from English, these words comes like physiology, pathogenesis, pharmacology and pharmaceuticals. Each and every system what I mentioned, Ayurveda, all these have sophisticated theoretical foundations, and with these subjects, not only even anatomy, Sharira Rachana, every subject and every topic have been dealt in literatures of Ayurveda and other systems. So we'll not deal with the other systems, only we'll try to understand Ayurveda and veterinary Ayurveda. So we'll see what is Ayurveda. So to define Ayurveda is nothing but science of life in general to say, but make you to understand more with a comprehensive way is Ayurveda is not a medical science. Please take it from me. Ayurveda is not a medical science. Ayurveda is a way of living actually. So what all you need to have a good health, wealth, everything has been explained in Ayurveda. So to understand or to define it, Ayurveda is knowledge which seeks to weight life in the scales of wholesomeness and happiness against their opposite. What does that mean? Wholesomeness and happiness is at the end, everybody wants wholesomeness and happiness, and their opposite again, it's deal with again opposite also. That means unwholesome unhappiness or sadness, you call it as. So it's not just a meager medical science. It is beyond medical science. It explains in detail about day-to-day business of an individual with the professions and health management, prevention, everything has been dealt in Ayurveda. It is not just disease, give drug. Okay, it is beyond that. So it explains healthy living, way of healthy living, wellness, what you want to have, what you have to do. Everything is explained in the first chapter of Ayurveda itself. So it says like Vagbhata, if you look into the reference from, Ashtanga Hriday, Khalartha Karmanam Yoga Inam Ityati Matraka Samyak Yogascha Vignayo Roga Arogyaika Karanam. See, it clearly says that what is the cause for health and ill health or sickness. Okay, it's nothing but use, underuse, overuse, misuse of time, sense, objects and activity will be the root cause of health and ill health. Appropriate use of thereof safeguards the good health. That means if you don't know what, how and when, then you may be sick. If you follow, you will not be sick and you will be healthy. It's clearly explained in 2-line shloka. So it holds good for all the diseases and all the etiology for all the diseases. Okay. So to brief you, this is the definition of Ayurveda and what is healthy living. So it's to say more on that, it's holistic system of medicine that is indigenous and widely practiced in India, but now it is giving way for other countries to come here and to learn and take this knowledge and to practice globally. Ayurveda was first recorded in the Vedas, which is considered as the oldest extant literature. That means for the knowledge, Vedas is considered as oldest extant knowledge literatures. So Veda means knowledge, Ayur means life. Whichever the knowledge or whatever the knowledge dealing about the life is considered as Ayurveda. And this healing system has been practiced in daily life in India for more than 5,000 years. It is there and it's going to be there. That's why the shloka says it is Anadi and it is Ananta. So how it was transmission, that means from one generation to other generation, how it has been carried. Until the start of 20th century, transmission was mostly on non-institutional form, that is Guru Shishya Parampara. So across, there are different universities, including Nalanda University, where there was Guru Shishya Parampara. If someone wants to learn Ayurveda, they have to be with the Guru for so many years. Once the Guru says that this Shishya have learned enough, then he can move out of the university and he can start by his own practice. It's not time bound. It is not 5.5 years. It is not 4.5 years. It was not 4 or 5.5 years. It was based on the Guru's decision. So once he get to know that he has learned enough, then he can move out and he can practice. So there are limited examples of institutionalized medical education in the history. But however, when the colonial period has started setting up in India, then the institution has started to begin and the institutions started teaching Ayurveda. Today, there are over 300 funded traditional medicals. That means 300 government colleges across India for training and empowering and making the graduates of Ayurveda and other systems like Unani, Siddha, systems of medicine, which is again 5.5-year course, similar to structure to the Western biomedicine or allopathic system. So examination pattern, everything similar to the modern system. So monitored by universities. Okay. Today, only a graduate of a recognized medical college, that means Ayurveda or traditional medical college, is legally entitled to practice traditional medicines like Ayurveda. Otherwise, he cannot practice until he graduated and registered under board. So how Ayurveda is different from modern medicine? So to understand, even modern medicines, they are using herbs, but theories and practices are different. So if you look into the word Ayurveda, so modern beliefs, science, that means to say it should have atoms, cells, tissues, then comes the organs and the systems, like that it goes. Ayurveda understands in a different way, like Panchamahabhutas. Then comes to say after Panchamahabhutas, then it will be leading to a formation of Tridoshas and then Saptadhatus, Trigunas, like that it goes. Then what is the word view? How we understand as a science? Sankhya philosophy. So what is this philosophy says? Universe evolved out of the unmanifest. So nobody knows that when human being has started, when species have started on the earth. So everything has begin from unmanifest. That is Sankhya philosophy. Once it is manifest, then biological systems start to evolve. That is the theory for Ayurveda as well. And it is made up of Panchamahabhutas, that the living things that consist of, every living thing consists of Panchamahabhutas, Atma, sense organs, and mind for its physiological functioning. So the basic principles of Ayurveda funded on Panchamahabhutas in relations with Trigunas, Tridoshas, Saptadhatus, and Trimalas. I'll not get into detail of all these things, but what are Tridoshas, what are Trigunas? I'll just brief you so that you can understand and you can start applying the principles while you practice. So Ayurveda is holistic, integrated, psychosomatic medical systems and is based on the view of universal natural law balancing Panchamahabhutas. This statement says that when you balance your Panchamahabhutas, Tridoshas, Trigunas, Saptadhatus, then you will be healthy. When there is imbalance, whatever the cause, whatever the etiology, when the imbalance started begin among all these, components of Ayurveda, then health or sickness. So it is a holistic psychosomatic medical system, which is not just dealing with the disease, prevention and management of diseases. So aims and goals of Ayurveda. What is the aim? Why Ayurveda science is been since 5000? What is its role? Swastasya swasthya rakshanam aturasya vikara prashamanam. Charaka chikitsa. Charaka is one of the senior most Ayurveda physician to say, was practicing 3500 years back. So he says that aim and goal of Ayurveda is swastasya swasthya rakshanam. Preserving the health of a healthy person is important. First, you should preserve the health. Then comes alleviating the disease of the ailing. That means first you try to preserve the health of the individual. If it is not helping, then if he is suffering or if he is sick, then try to help him to reduce or to cure the disease. So swastasya swasthya rakshanam aturasya vikara prashamanam. It is in Sanskrit. I have put it in English. So the ultimate aim of Ayurveda is to guide every human being and the other species to maintain and promote health, prevent ailments, which are main interest to achieve dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Why these four, component is coming to the picture? Why everybody needs health? If you question yourself, Ayurveda given clear answer for that. Why we need for health? Why we are always, going for all sort of things to get good health? So if you want to attain dharma, artha, kama, mokshanam, arogyam, moolam, uttamam. So if you want to attain all these four in your lifetime, Like, dharma means the duty, artha means the wealth, karma means the desire, and the moksha means the happiness and the bliss. If you want to attain all these four, you need to have health. If you want to have health, you follow Ayurveda. So you will get health. That is the meaning the shloka ends. Okay. So everybody knows that we got to know that what is health, why we need health. But what is the definition of health? What WHO says the definition, what Ayurveda says the definition. If you look into that, much of the things are similar, and WHO has given definition, I think, so 60, 70 years back or 80 years back, whereas Ayurveda has given 3,500 years back. So we'll see what is the definition of health based on WHO's understanding. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just merely the absence of disease or infirmity is the WHO's definition. You all aware and you are following. Yes. Ayurvedic definition of health. Samadosha, samagnischa, samadhatu, malakriya, prasanna atma, indriya, mana, swastha, iti vidiyate. Swastha means healthy. Who is swastha? Samadosha, the balanced three physiological entity in the body. Samagnischa, the metabolic factor, the digestive fire, it should be balanced. Samadhatu, all tissue elements in the body, including skeletal, should be well balanced. Malakriha, all the excretory products should expel every day with normal. Prasanna atma indriya mana swastha iti vidiyate. Prasanna. So atma, that means the soul, the sense organs, the mind, everything should be in the prasanna avastha. Then only you will be considered as swastha or the healthy. Though it is very subjective, we cannot quantify it. Qualitatively, we can assess and we can tell that who is healthy, who is not healthy by seeing them itself. So almost similar, and much of the things are similar in the way they have explained. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not just merely the absence of disease. So if no disease means we cannot say it, we are healthy. So we need to be completely physically, mentally, and socially well-being. Similar, it is being explained in Ayurveda. Samadosha, samagnischa, samadhatu, malakriyaha, prasanna atma indriya mana swastha iti vidiyate. It's not now, it is 3,005 years old shloka from Shrishruta Samhita, the father of surgery. So I already explained this slide. So Ayurvedic way of life is all creatures on the earth seek happiness in whatever they do, but happiness cannot be earned without righteous conduct, without righteous way of living. So therefore righteous conduct is obligatory for all. That means ayu kamya manena dharmartha sukha sadhanam ayurveda upadesheshu videya paramadara. That means if you want to seek happiness, you need to lead a healthy life. To need a healthy life, you need to have a right practices. To need a right practices, you need to follow the regimen mentioned in the Ayurveda. So if you start doing that, you can have health, healthy and happy life. So it is from Vagbata. Again, it is 3,005 years old. So what are the key concepts of Ayurveda? What are the theories? What are the practices? It's not that one class I can make you to understand. It's 5.5 years plus 3 years like that. The days or it is not time bound. As earlier, it was Guru Shishya, it is not time bound. But now it is because of the time bound, we have to appear for the exams to learn. But still, what are the theories, the concepts? First and foremost, as I mentioned, Panchamahabhutas, 5 elements theory is the basis. When you have a balance in 5 elements, you will be healthy. If it is disturbed or imbalance, you will be leading to or you become sick. So concept of 3 doshas, 3 humors, physiological entities, 7 dasas, anatomical components, 3 malas, that excretory products every day producing from these 2. Then concept of Agni and Hama, that is digestion and metabolism, very important for health and ill health. Loka Purusha Samyata, that is macrocosm and microcosm. What does that mean? Whatever is happening in the nature, it's going to happen within the species. Whatever you see in the nature, you can see in the human beings and other animals. That is called as macrocosm and microcosm. Then Swastha, health. What are the components for that health? Dinacharya, daily regimen, explained in Ayurveda. At what time you have to get up from the bed till going for the bed to sleep. Completely explained to follow based on the seasonal Rutucharya and Swastharutta, day-to-day practices by the individuals. And the Nadi Pariksha, pulse diagnosis. Then Prakriti, the biological constitution. Is every human beings are similar? It is not so. Modern medicine says it's general, but when you look into that, so many medicines may not work for many people. So that is how it is told long back itself in Ayurveda. So medicine and the food and the practices, it is not general, it is particular and based on the biological constitution of an individual. Ayurveda has explained 7 constitution. Based on that, their health, ill health, based on that, their food and the regimen should be changed. Based on that, the disease going to manifest for them. Based on that, the management of the disease is explained in Ayurveda. That is called as Prakriti. So, okay. Then understanding of drug materials, Dravya Guna Shastra, about the component of each and every drug, like in the pharmacology, what you study in the pharmacology and each and every component of the drug. Okay. Then basic techniques of preparations of medicines, starting from simple decoctions to tablet, everything is explained in Ayurveda. What are the techniques and what are the standard procedures you have to follow while preparing. Then Rasayana, the rejuvenation therapy. And the last is purification therapy, Shodhana. Every day we are end up with so many toxins because of metabolism, food metabolism. So now and then we need to get purify our body. It is explained in Ayurveda. That is called as Shodhana. So to brief you, so to take to the concepts, I'll not take all the concepts, only few concepts. I just want to tell you what are the basics understanding. So Panchamahabhuta theory is one among them. You know what are Panchamahabhutas? So Prithvi, up, Teja, Vayu and Akasha comes into that, like ether, air, fire, water and earth in English. And sense organs, each sense organs is depending on Panchamahabhutas for hearing, touch, seeing, taste and smell. And sense organs that is functioning, I have mentioned, that is for ear, it is hearing, skin for touch and eyes for seeing, like that. And these Panchamahabhuta are responsible for this sense and sense organ functions. But beyond that, these are the basic components of every cell or the atom, or even the next level understanding is tissues, organs and systems. So the next is Loka Purusha Sameta, that is whole and part relationship, that is microcosm and macrocosm. So as I mentioned, 5 basic elements like Panchamahabhutas are, you can see even in the nature as well as in the individuals. So whatever is happening in the nature, it's going to happen in human body as well. So microcosm is a human body and the macrocosm is the nature. So it is also based on Panchamahabhutas. So the next concept clearly explained is similarity and dissimilarity, that is called as, Samanya and Vishesha Siddhanta, the principle, how it is going to bifurcate, like, similarity and dissimilarities in drug, in its action, in its quality. When we apply for each and every disease and its management, this is going to come into the picture. That means whatever the similar, for example, if you have a blood loss, we have to give the drug which increases the blood, that we call it as a Samanya or similarity, responsible for increasing. Exactly opposite, when we don't want to increase, when we want to decrease, the dissimilarity property come into the picture, responsible for decreasing. For example, there are a lot of secretions is happening in the lungs. We need to reduce the secretions. So then we have to use the drug which are dissimilar in nature, either in its, quality or in its action. So this is the basis of, principle explained long back in Ayurveda. So much modern theories have been taken from this, and the action of the drugs are depending on this principle. So similarity always goes with the responsible for oneness. That means ekatva karam, it brings the togetherness. Whereas dissimilarity taking the responsibility of separating. That means prutakatva karanam. That means it separates. Even surgical removal is also come under dissimilarity or taking the approach of this concept. And always similarity goes with the responsible for increasing the same or similar. Whereas dissimilar goes with the responsible for counteraction. These are the basic understanding or the components of applying the drug in our day-to-day practices. So based on these theories, formulations of Ayurveda has been made, and products of Ayurveda is in practice. So how we understand the genesis of the disease, what we call the disease in Ayurveda, we call it as Roga or Vyadhi. So these are the 5 components to understand the diseases. The one is, first is the etiology. Even you also study the same, the Nidana or the causative agents for any disease. Then next is prodroma, that is Purva Rupa, prodromal symptoms or the signs for any disease. Then the Rupa, symptom manifestation by complete. Then Upashaya, therapeutic diagnosis we call it. You call it as a differential diagnosis. Then Samprapti, we call it is complete manifestation of a disease. These are the 5 different stages explained in Ayurveda to understand each and every disease, and based on that, the treatment protocols varies from disease to disease. For example, if you want to control the disease at the etiology level itself, we have to prevent or take away the species or the person who get in touch with that etiology. Then comes the prodroma, the symptom or therapeutic diagnosis, like that it goes. Then how the disease, cause of disease is explained in Ayurveda. Whatever you take, food or exposure, it will become an etiology. Because of the etiology, there will be an aberrant metabolism within individual. Because of the aberrant metabolism, there will be a production of pharma or the toxic material in the body, which leads to pro-inflammatory condition in the body, which led to development of waste products. Because of that, there will be blocks in the microchannels. We call it as a srotas. And because of this, there will be formation of the disease. This is a standard method explained in Ayurveda to understand and to take the steps for the treatment. We call it as a samprapti gatakas. So for example, the treatment can happen at the aberrant metabolism level itself, or we can adapt the treatment at the AMA or the toxic level formation itself, or even at the level of blocks microchannels, or after completion or formation of the disease. So depending on the skill or knowledge of a physician, he can tackle the disease at the different stages. So this is the way Ayurveda is explained for the manifestation of a disease. So what are the treatment protocols? The general 3 treatment have been explained in Ayurveda. First, we call it as a Yukti Vipashraya Chikitsa, that is logical and empirical treatment using drugs, origin of plants, animals, minerals, metals, and other sources. The second is Sattvavaji Chikitsa, controlling of mind, asking the patient to not to worry much, treatment using mental control through practices such as yoga. And the third treatment, it is too general to say, this is the 3 important types of treatment mentioned in Ayurveda, that is Daiva Vipashraya, that is spiritual way of treating and using spiritual methods. So the first is logical or empirical, carries the 90% of our treatment protocols. Then Sattvavajaya goes with the 8%, that means 98%. And the last 2%, if you are not able to handle the disease through logical or controlling of mind, then the end we go with spiritual way of treating the diseases. So these are the 3 basic classification of treatment protocols explained in Ayurveda. So what are the branches of Ayurveda? If you look into that, we call it as Ashtanga Ayurveda, 8 branches of Ayurveda, which completely deal all the diseases. So, okay. So these 8 covers all diseases. I am literally put it in the other side as a modern way of understanding and modern branches to say. First is Kaya Chikitsa. So which is called as general medicines, which deal, Kaya means the body, Chikitsa means the treatment. Whichever the method we adopt to treat the disease in the body, we call it as Kaya Chikitsa, general medicine. Then the Kaumara Bhritya, that pediatrics including obstetrics and gynecology. Then Bhuta Vidya, the psychiatry and microbiology to say. Then Shalakya Tantra, ophthalmology and ENT. Shalya Tantra, the surgery. Agata Tantra, the toxicology. Rasayana Tantra, rejuvenating medicine. And Vajikarana Tantra, virology, including geriatrics. See that Ayurveda has told 8 branches 3,500 years back itself. So I think all these 8 branches has become the basis of modern science, and they carry with these branches and they have expanded it. So then coming to the subjectivity and objectivity of contemporary science and traditional knowledge systems, how it differs, how they have been carried the science to understand. So the first is the modern. I'll explain you the modern way of dealing the science. Okay, the contemporary science says that testability, verifiability, reproducibility, quantitative analysis, evidence-based, structural, and generalized. This is the method they follow, and they says that after going these process, they consider as science. Yes, of course, till date it is in practice from the modern or biomedicine. So testability, verifiability, like that it goes. Whereas traditional knowledge systems go in a different process to approve that as a science. That is 4-fold approach. That is Upadesha. That means our senior seers, whatever they say in the literature, just you follow, you will get the results. That means scriptures and the peers, Aptopadesha. We call it as our gurus are Apta for us. Whatever the Upadesha has been given by the guru, if you follow, then it works. Then the second is the Pratyaksha. direct cognition. Whatever you see in the patient, so you can practice.
I'm sorry to disturb you, sir. Swaranshi Paul, kindly mute yourself.
Me, no.
Thank you, sir.
Shall I continue?
Yes, sir. You
Okay.
can.
So the next understanding is a pratyaksha, the direct cognition. So whatever I give, I have to see the results in the patient. Until unless if I am not seeing the results, then I cannot practice. This is called as direct cognition. Then the anumana, the inference. So someone has given, so it is working, so I can also give. That is the way we follow. Yes, of course, it's working. Then yukti, at the end, whatever you follow, the rationale. So based on that rationale, you can select the drugs or the formulation or methodology to treat the diseases. So then qualitative approach, it is not the quantitative approach, that is we follow qualitative, whereas the modern follow quantitative approach. Then always it goes with the word of mouth and it is functional, whereas modern is structural. These are the two different, way of understanding two different sciences for its evidence. So yeah, I just brief you all so far about Ayurveda, the principles and the practices. Now I just want to take you what is veterinary Ayurveda. Is that the same, or it is differing, or is it totally something new or different from Ayurveda? Of course, it is not different. It is the same or the similar, but how we are able to apply the science in our practice, it's a question. Because plenty of literatures have been there and it is being explained, different formulations, different herbs, but how to take this knowledge to say that to user or the end user to through different stakeholders. So I'll just brief you, then we'll discuss much more on that, what is veterinary Ayurveda. So we can see Rig Veda in his 10th chapter and 4.2 shloka, it is explaining, may we escape poverty by means of cattle. That means in the Rig Veda itself, there are mentioning about the cattle and its husbandry activities. If cattle and husbandry activities are existing that time itself, that means there are practices for health and ill health of cattle. So next, I just want to put in Atharva Veda shloka, the wild boar knows that the herb which will cure it, as does the mongoose. That means there are reference to say that there are plenty of herb has been used to treat the animals in Atharva Veda itself. So why I'm putting all this means history goes similar to human Ayurveda. So what are the four, how Ayurveda and veterinary Ayurveda goes? Ayurveda says science of, that means science of life. Similar for veterinary Ayurveda, it is science of life. A codified system of traditional knowledge encompassing even ethno as a part of practice is veterinary Ayurveda. It's a multi-branch science which is a part or together along with Ruksha Ayurveda, care of trees, Mruga Ayurveda, care of animals, and Shayana Ayurveda, care of birds. Even for birds, there are literatures to treat the disease of the birds. To treat the diseases of the trees and plants, literatures are there, that is called as Ruksha Ayurveda, and particularly animal species, okay, starting from cattle to horse to donkey, all these comes under Mruga Ayurveda. So Atharva Veda in its section 4 relates to Pashu Ayurveda, completely dedicated to Pashu Ayurveda, section 4 of Atharva Veda. Then Garuda Purana mentions number of Ayurvedic medicines which have been used for animal ailments. Then Shalihotra Samhita, completely dedicated to animal health management, which includes 1600 shloka, 120 chapters and 8 parts on equine medicines. So during that time, horse is a major animal for using for war and other situations. So equine medicine has given importance during that time. So then what are the principles? 4 Ayurvedic axioms have been explained, particularly for Pashu Ayurveda and Mruga Ayurveda. The natural state of the individual is to be healthy. That means the state of natural way of living is going to give you healthy lifestyle or health. Disease can be prevented at its pre-manifestation stage itself by maintaining and modifying the balance of 3 doshas. That's what I explained the principles. At the level of pre-manifestation itself, we can prevent the disease by lifestyle or by giving well-balanced diet and food or with the medicines to balance 3 doshas, seemingly a healthy individuals. Then root cause of a disease is lowering of the internal or the Agni, the fire, the digestion, which may correlate to deficiency of enzymes. Okay, this is going to be the root cause for any diseases. That's what Ayurveda in human practice also says. Roga sarveapi mandagni sutaram udarani cha. That shloka. That means for every disease, lowering the metabolic rate or digestive fire is the root cause. Then the body possesses an innate ability to heal itself. Whether you are treating or not, many diseases are self-limiting and it will heal by itself. These are the 4 Ayurvedic axioms have been mentioned in literatures of Mruga Ayurveda, and it is being taken for practice. Features. What are the veterinary Ayurveda features? Why it is? So modern vets always, they use many herbs. Many veterinary doctors are using the products from many Ayurveda pharmaceutical companies, but none of them are applying the principles. It's very hard to apply the principles and to practice, but still they use the herbs in the name of Ayurveda product, but it is not the same goes, or it is not the one which has to be in the practice. So Ayurvedic knowledge with the integration into contemporary scientific understanding for etiopathogenesis based on the product in the market. Treatment approach, herbs and other natural products, they do follow. Commercially available Ayurvedic herbal formulations are not dosha specific. That is nothing to do with the principles of Ayurveda. Just it's a research based, evidence based, based on the modern understanding, modern action, modern pharmacological. So they have been applying and they are using. Okay. The Ayurveda veterinary practitioner need to regard the diet and digestive system. So once they understand the importance of Agni and Ahara Krama, Vihara and Vichar, then it's going to be a veterinary Ayurveda. Otherwise, it is completely a natural product origin from herbs. So the importance should be given to disease management, prevention and wellness. If at all, if they have to follow veterinary Ayurveda. So how paradigm shift, where it happened, how, till 19th century, veterinary service completely taken care by indigenous knowledge, including Ayurveda. Later only, the modern veterinary system has come into the picture. First training course in veterinary science based on allopathy system in Kolkata, 1821. I don't know. Sorry if I am wrong. I've taken from others this one. So you all the veterinarian, you will be knowing which is the first veterinary college and where it started. So I have taken this data from others. Establishment of civil vet school is in different parts of country. You can see in Hapur, Ajmer and Shimla the dates goes. Then establishment of first veterinary medicine school at Lahore. Then subsequent establishment. See what I mean to say in this slide is until 19th century, veterinary service in the country and veterinary care has been taken care by indigenous knowledge, including Ayurveda, folk and everything. So later only the other system like modern biomedicine system has taken over. So shift in veterinary practice from EVM to modern veterinary medicine has taken place later. So, okay, what is ethno-veterinary? So far, we try to understand the veterinary Ayurveda like that. What is ethno-veterinary medicine? Ethno means community specific. Ethno. Veterinary means again the profession, in respect to management, health, husbandry, everything comes for the animals. And the medicine is the drug or whatever we follow to treat or to manage or to maintain. So ethnic plus veterinary plus medicine is become ethno-veterinary. Used to refer systematic investigation of folk beliefs and practices in veterinary medicine is considered as ethno-veterinary medicine. It's not just using herb. It should be a systematic investigations, whether this herb is going to help or not, whether the herb is going to manage the disease or not, cure the disease or not, prevent or not, like that. So she is the one, McCorkle. She is basically a German scientist, veterinarian. She has coined the term ethno-veterinary in 1986 and she was part of our team. She was working and still she is in natural livestock farming, Europe. Okay. A system of folk beliefs, skills, techniques and practices related to healthcare of animals developed and transmitted over generation is also called as ethno-veterinary medicine. So it's not that, okay, even if you're not investigating, if you're not validating, we cannot call it ethno. So yes, we can call based on folk beliefs, skills and techniques. A holistic interdisciplinary study of local knowledge available to the local people, associated skills, practices, beliefs, practitioners and social structure pertaining to healthcare of animals is considered as ethno-veterinary practices. So different definitions given by different teams, different people and different texts have combined all. I put it here to make you to understand and to take it all comes under ethno-veterinary. So whether it is validated or not. So if you look into the history, there are different cultures and practices. When you go back 9000 BC, there is sheep culture practice or sheep culture people where they were, rearing or husbandry activities. So Mesopotamians, they were using the herbs, and then cattle culture people started 6000 BC, like Egyptians and Indians. Then pig and horse culture societies 3000 BC, like Sumerians, Greek Romans, Cascanians, like that it goes. And what it gives for us is, when there is an animal, there should be a methods or the modalities to maintain health and to treat the diseases. So early civilization, how it was taking place, Sumerians, Egyptians, there were a lot of caves, hearts, and scripts and culture practices. We can see till date. So that a lot of usage of herbs and its practices on palm script, even in the some caves you can see Sumerians, Greeks, Vedic, Brahmin, Shaliotras, rudimentary knowledge. But whatever it is transferring of knowledge from generation to generation was taking place. So how that importance are gaining for ethno-veterinary knowledge, and when since 1980s people started to understand the importance, when World Health Assembly in 1977 they gave the quotation, or to say that, to urge people or the public or the policymaker to merge or to introduce traditional system as a part of their drug delivery or health delivery systems, then it started gaining momentum. So realization that EVM can provide cost-effective alternatives and complements to inappropriate and too expensive other systems or modern high-tech veterinary medicines. So keeping this base 1980s, then the momentum has begun and consideration, and the people have started to work and to accumulate the data on ethno knowledge. So the other important factor for us to understand is indigenous traditional knowledge systems are safe, eco-friendly, and easy to adapt. Okay. So why it has been taken importance is variable practices, and which also includes prevention, surgery, breeding, housing, nutrition, and management. It is not static and changing over time. So people are been practicing and they were using, and it is changing place to place, time to time. So there are a lot of publications of literatures, research papers, reviews, books, and they've started. And FAO has given in 1984, in their meeting reports documenting on traditional system of medicines for different countries, particularly Asian countries, because very vast knowledge is existing in Asia. So India, Thailand, Nepal are a part of it. Then annotated bibliographies, given by team from Europe in 1989, and Martin in 2001, and Antra from Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh in 2004. Then support to EVM program by international agencies like E4 International Project from US has started, and Philippines, that is IIRR, that is International Institute of Rural Reconstruction, have started developing data on this, and International Technology Development Group from UK have developed a lot of data on this, and they are promoting these with different stakeholders. So in context to India, what we did, particularly from TDU and Tanuvas, we did a lot of extensive research on that. First international conference have been conducted by ANTRA in 1997 on alternative to livestock development in Pune. Then again, one more workshop conducted by ANTRA in 2004, indigenous knowledge applications, bringing all the stakeholders, including healers, veterinarians, research, industrialists, everything on one single roof to discuss on that. Then ICR funding. So, okay, for mega projects, particularly on documentation and scientific validation in EVM, it is, I think it's still continuing from ICR. And International Veterinary Ayurveda Congress have been conducted by TDU in 2014, 16 and 18, and 2020 supposed to be there. Because of the COVID, it is postponed to 2021. We're going to have an initiative on ERD, endogenous rural development by Germans, League for Pastoral People, and Antra FRLST, our earlier name of our university, have been joined together to promote and validate and evidence-based research on ethno-veterinary medicines. So why this support? Why we need to go for ethno-medicine? It's a question for all of us. So it's from top to down, bottom up, we are participating. And, because of affordable, accessible, of ethnomedicine, it is been in picture, and AMR and drug residue is the major constraints in modern way of managing the diseases, including side effects and abuse of modern drugs, and gap in demand and supply of modern veterinary, and it is not reaching the rural people, and growing consumer preference for organic products is a part of it, and then poor adaptability of exotic breeds to tropical climate leading to many diseases, and our poor farmers are not able to manage such diseases, and cost of animal health has been increased, and animal husbandry is not sustained. So keeping all these view, and we have given much more important to ethno knowledge and veterinary Ayurveda, why we want to mainstream. And I'm just going to brief it few slides of what TDU and Tanuvas have done so far on ethno and traditional knowledge. Documented 453 formulations from the healers in 14 states, and 353 formulation found safe and efficacious. 25 formulations for 25 clinical conditions have validated through field observational studies and assessed by Ayurveda for promotion, and started mainstreaming EVM for veterinary graduates through online PG diploma and certificate programs. So far we have trained 61 PG diplomats with Tanuvas. Nearly 1,700 veterinarians have through certified programs, NDDB, Milk Unions, Federation, Government of Sikkim, Government of Haryana, 500 village resources, 30,000 farmers, organized international seminars on veterinary Ayurveda. And this is a process. When we document anything, why we need to document the conditions, identification of ethno-veterinary practices and its prioritization, then documentation, desk research, literature references, finding where it is being mentioned about for particular condition, then rapid assessment, clinical trials, selected formulations, then enterprise and product development, and then it go for promotion programs such as training vets, farmers, home urban. This is the standard methodology we follow at university when we take one formulation before it reaches to the veterinarian or farmer. This is again. So who are all the people coming to the picture before we validate or assess? Literature, Indian system of practitioners, that means Ayurveda and other traditional practitioners, community assessment people, folk healer, literature from modern pharmacologist, Western biomedicine practitioner like veterinarian. Everybody sit together and we'll see that whether this formulation has to be promoted or not. Yes is promotion, no means not to promote, P means we need to rework on this formulation. So our collaborators and NDDB, our partners to say NDDB, Tanuvas, Luvas, Rajuas, Kwapsu, Amul, KMF, About Nutrition Supply Chain Dairy Companies, AH Government of Sikkim. Now we are approaching for AH Government Punjab through Gadwasu, 30 Milk Unions, NLF Holland, Ethiopia and Uganda, IFOM, IHA organizations we are working. So this is what NDDB has done, simpler way of our formulation. So for I think 15 clinical conditions in dairy animals. So you can see that ingredients, preparations, applications and all those things. You can see, all the drugs and method of application and all this. There are QR code is here. If you scan with your smartphone, then video in the YouTube open how to use this formulations in particular clinical conditions. So these are the clinical conditions we are dealing, and this is the data from NDDB, and you can see the efficacy and number of cases treated and documented by veterinarian itself from NDDB Animal Health Department. Just to brief you, and the efficacy ranging from 70 to 95% it is going. And this is from About Nutrition Supply Chain Dairy Companies. They are also working with us and they are finding results more than NDDB. And see, and the number is very huge to say, but only few we have taken for presentations. And every month they are sending the data, and it's a monthly recording from the About and referring to TDU. And this is from Krishna Milk Union, particularly on repeat breeding, and that too in buffaloes. You can see the animals conceived 97.74%, 532 animals they have treated for this study. So the last slide from NDDB, after our collaboration and our intervention with our traditional medicines like ethno and veterinary Ayurveda, 49% reduction in CMT positivity in mastitis, 60 to 85% reduction in antibiotic residues in the milk samples, average monthly reduction in cases after EVM 6,326 cases, total saving in medicine cost 2018 to versus 2019, you can see 112 lakhs. So above, to say, 200 trained veterinarians gone to promote this, and 82% cure rate in EVM for mastitis from 75,000 cases documented, and 86% cure rate in EVM for other ailments from 1,55,000 cases documented. This is, they have published this article also, NDDB team, Animal Health Group, and this they have given the reduction with antibiotics, beta-lactams, pheno, sulfa, and tetra, like that. So year wise they have given how much reduction in dairy federations. So this is for the day. Thank you everyone. So I tried to introduce you. It's a very vast, and each and every component have to take number of hours, make you to understand. But just to brief you all, I tried minimal slide with limited time allocated to me. So I thank the organizer, particularly the Dumka sir and Rajdeep Kaur, for giving me an opportunity to brief you all, like veterinary students, to understand more about traditional systems, ethno-veterinary medicine and veterinary Ayurveda. Yeah, thank you. Any queries? I'm here to answer, please.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kumar. So we have a few queries from our students.
Please,
just briefly, we can address these.
Yes, sir.
First one is, are there any books for veterinarians or for UG students, undergraduate students, particularly on this ethno-veterinary medicine they want to know?
Sir. We have a handbook on ethno-veterinary medicine published by TDU only. So yes, they can read that. That is for very limiting to clinical conditions and applications of the formulations. Yes, we have a handbook.
Okay, so for the information of our students, GADVASU itself has also published one field guide for veterinary, you can say dairy farmers and for field veterinarians.
Sure, sir.
On ethno-veterinary medicine. This is going to come soon. It is under publication and it will be helpful. This is this will be an additional resource. Then another question is from some students: what measures are taken for cultivation of such herbs at commercial scale? Can you throw light on this, sir?
Sir, I can hear you. See, very good question from the student. See, as we are using much of our spices from the kitchen in our formulations, and it is available in the kitchen, and only few we are using from the ads. So when we are empowering the farmers to use it, not much to worry, because depending on the animal capacity, they're going to grow their herbs and they keep the herbs in the kitchen. Not much to go with the larger, cultivation and industry orientation. So cultivation, it's a big picture for us to understand and to promote. But in our case, we are empowering the farmers, not to worry on that. When veterinarian empower the farmers to use, they themselves will start growing and start using, not on the commercial side.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kumar. And for the information, I'll supplement the knowledge of our students that we have also established a medicinal plants garden at our administrative block. So our students, they are most welcome. They can go there, have a visit, and there we are having at present 91 species of different medicinal plants. And there are always someone to guide you over there. They will let you know what are the different practices and how these are grown and what they are used for.
Sure, sir.
So, Dr. Kumar, the third question from students is that is there any standard process for assessing Tridosha?
Standard process, yes, it is there, only subjective. Because standard process, when it comes into the picture, we need to look for instrumentation and quantitative analysis. But here in this case, it's a qualitative analysis. Physician will be able to analyze the function based on the health and ill health, and based on signs and symptoms, we can assess. But it's very difficult to assess quantitatively or measure it. It's individual or subjective parameter. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, for such an elaborate coverage of this topic, ethno-veterinary medicine, then folk medicine, Ayurveda, veterinary Ayurveda, because we have very primitive knowledge of this. With our limited, you can say, exposure, we are unable to go in depth into this topic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for explaining the holistic approach for
Okay.
not only for health and disease management, but for you can say ideal strategies for making a better life.
Ha, sir.
So you have explained it in a very holistic manner. This discussion was very elaborative. I think the students must have been benefited highly from this. At least
Ha, sir.
I am enriched. Our staff, we are enriched
you,
by your this discussions and presentation.
Ha, sir.
And because whatever about veterinary Ayurveda or about Ayurveda we know is only from limited sources.
Ha, sir.
People like me, we used to understand that Ayurveda is only what Baba Ramdev and Patanjali, those people have
sir.
told us.
Yeah.
But we are not having much detailed knowledge of this. So your presentation is a very helpful tool for our students to gain knowledge, and they will explore this field further. And regarding our interaction, we hope to have further interactions with you, with your institute, more collaboration, so that we can come close in touch with one another. And we can also work in this field for the benefit of farmers, for the benefit of veterinarians, and for the benefit of society in general.
Great.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank
Kumar.
you so much, sir. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to brief you all. I hope we'll have more collaborations and we can work together for, betterment of the communities.
Yes,
Thank
this
you
is just
so
the
much.
beginning, and we will continue
the
this journey further.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I'm thankful to all our students who are here to listen to the expert advice of Dr. Kumar.
Yes.
I hope this will help you a lot, and particularly during this pandemic period where a lot of herbs have been introduced
started using,
just to boost immunity. So
Immunity,
people will understand better what
Yes,
type of these natural products can help us to boost our immunity and to keep ourselves healthy and safe. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you so much, sir. Have a nice day.